After all of these months trying to figure out all of these mysteries, I finally got all the answers I need right in front of me. Which is why it's weird that you decided to wait a whole week before I revealed them to you. That's because I have a schedule of when I expose my slice of lives to the people, and it's usually a week in between each other. We did a lot of research, didn't we? A lot of research that had nothing to do with all these mysteries. Oh, Papa Midnight, don't you remember? Don't you remember the reason why I had you resurrect all of those dead supervillains in the first place? Oh yeah, you had me do that very irresponsible incantation just so that you could review movies with them. Yes, and I still want to appreciate you for all that you did for me. Sure, you bailed out on me last summer when I needed you the most. I've told you, that was because I thought my time was done, that this world didn't need me anymore. But then I found out that I made a horrible mistake. This world is doomed to end, but there is a way to stop it. Wait a minute, so you mean to tell me that all of those people who keep yelling at me about how the world is gonna end are true? Yes. Finally, a concrete answer. So what is the cause of this Armageddon? The cause is that the inhabitants of this universe, not just any universe, but this is Earth 8675309. Yeah, sure, that. There are certain inhabitants of this world who don't realize that this world exists for a particular purpose, and they're trying to stop that purpose from being fulfilled, and instead replace it with a new purpose. But with that old purpose potentially going away, that deems this world pointless and irrelevant, and so it's slowly withering away, unless we make sure that these people who are repurposing it stop. Holy fuck! That was really cryptic and nondescript so that we can keep stretching along this plot line until it's completely answered. Yes, that is all I know about this, but there is a way to get more information. All of my voodoo knowledge and hundreds of years of experience living, and the encounters I had in other worlds, have only given me so much information. But I do know a way to get more. Speaking of information, you and I have had quite a week, didn't we? Doing all of this fucking research. We did so much goddamn research. We painted that library red. We fucked it in the ass. That's how much learning we did. Yeah, by the way, why the hell were we doing that? None of that research had to do with the apocalypse or any of this. It had to do with the Congo for some reason. Well, Papa Midnight, you see, I am a juggler of sorts. You see, I can't just do all this research for the potential Armageddon and all the disappearances. I have a life to live. I do other things with my time, such as doing this review show on a semi-weekly basis. And because of that, I need to juggle things, okay? I need to set aside time from one of my activities and do the other. I sit down with one of my good friends, and in this case it's you, Papa Midnight, and I discuss the latest movie to be splitter-splattered across the silver screen, and this week it's Tarzan. And that's why we did all of that history binge. Because you see, Papa Midnight, the reason why you and I exist, along with everyone else in this fantastical community, is to counteract the superheroes. Yes, even though I hate those goody two-shoe assholes, they're the reasons why we exist. And so it's important to learn the history of those superheroes. And so you have a lot of people that argue, when exactly did the superhero idea begin? Did it begin with Superman in the 1930s? Yes, basically, officially. No, hold on, Papa Midnight. That's the easy way out of this argument. There are ideas very similar to the superhero concept that existed before Superman, such as Zorro, Flash Gordon, Doc Savage, the Scarlet Pompadour, which dates way back in literature times. And some people would argue that it dates way back even before that, all the way to ancient times when we had mythological legends of gods and demigods of this sort, such as Hercules and Thor and Jesus. You know, you might get some butt hurt from that last statement. You do realize that I'm saying this in a funny voice, you know, this isn't all supposed to reflect my real life ideals. You do realize that I am just a funny cartoon character, so I thought it would be funny to list Jesus along with other, amongst Thor and Hercules, and besides, that should be taken as a compliment. That should be a compliment to Jesus. Did you hear that, Jesus? I complimented you, okay? Don't strike me down, alright? I'm scared for my fucking life. I fear you. Anyway, so it's very debatable to really pinpoint the true origin of the superhero idea. However, if you want to look at one of the potential choices for that birth, then look no further than Tarzan. Yes, Tarzan. Now, some of you might not be that used to that idea of Tarzan being a proto-superhero. Like, they're probably used to Tarzan being separate from that genre. Tarzan is like, oh, he's not a part of that genre. He's something else. He's adventure traveler jungle guy. Well, guess what? There are a lot of parallels that Tarzan has with the modern concept of superheroes, and this here movie emphasizes on that a whole lot. And you of all people maybe know what I'm talking about in particular. Why on earth would you think that? Well, maybe it's considering the fact that you actually went toe-to-toe with Tarzan. Are you serious right now? You need to get off the shrooms. Now hold on, I am not on shrooms, I am on peyote, but that's not relevant to this conversation. What I'm saying is that you were actually there during the events of this movie. Didn't you just say that you lived for over 100 years? Oh fuck, I did. Oh shit. Oh man, my cover's been blown. What cover? I knew you had mystical powers since the first day I met you. This was kind of a public thing we were aware of. I know that, it's just that I'm one of those people who's not really comfortable with revealing their age. No, I get that, I respect that. But seriously though, I put it all together. If we explore the history of Tarzan, then we are also able to explore the proto-super villains as well. And Tarzan has a whole lot. Not just John Clayton. Come on, think outside the box. There's more to his roguish gallery than John Clayton. I just can't freaking come up with all of them because I've only seen so few things regarding Tarzan. Like the Disney movie and I missed that shitty animated one that came out a couple years ago. I didn't watch that one. Nope, I haven't seen any of them. I mean, I went on that great, what the hell is it called? Is it called the Great Movie Ride at Hollywood Studios and Disney? You know, I went on that, and that had audio from the original, from one of the Tarzan movies, the old Tarzan movies, and you had animatronics of Jane and Tarzan. So there's my experience with Tarzan. I think I also saw a few snippets of that short-lived CW show. Yes, you think CW likes to whore out the superhero genre now? Well, guess what? They were doing that way back in the early 2000s with Tarzan. Well, really, they were mainly doing that with Smallville. Tarzan is still arguable. If you're so set in your ways of Tarzan being a superhero, then why not do one of your post-defeat specials? Oh, well, I would say to you, Papa Midnight, that the reason why I didn't is because the supervillains of that movie are no longer alive, but I'm not. And do you know why I'm not going to say that? Because one of them is still alive, and he's sitting in front of me right now. Yes, this was all an elaborate ruse. You've been found out, Papa Midnight. You've been found out. You have not always gone by that title of Papa Midnight. No, you once went by a different title, and that title was Chief Mbonga. Is that how you pronounce it? Mbonga. You were Chief Mbonga. The point is that I found you out, Mbonga. I found you out. So you should review yourself. You might as well just come clean now, Mbonga. Oh, God damn it. I was hoping we wouldn't talk about this. I was doing my best to avoid this. I really was. As soon as you mentioned we were talking about Tarzan this week, I thought to myself, gee, I better hope he doesn't bring up the elephant in the room. And not only did you point out that elephant, you fucked the elephant in the ass because you just couldn't let this go. You just couldn't let go of the fact that I happen to have fought Tarzan. Yes, I admit it. Yes, I went up against Tarzan, okay? It's a bit of a dark point in my life, okay? That's why I didn't bring it up all this time, because I prefer not to talk about it. Really? You've lived for hundreds and hundreds of years, Papa Midnight, and of all those experiences you've had, this is the one that you're least comfortable with sharing? Yes, because it was during a phase where I decided to get out of the voodoo practices and discover if I had other hobbies to enjoy. And so I became the chief of a Congo tribe, and it was a really nice job, until the most tragic event in my whole life happened. Oh man, I am really sorry. I'm really sorry. I just realized how insensitive I was. I didn't mean to bring up this really touchy subject with you regarding your son's death. Whoops! I just said it all out in the open. Yes, you whoopsie doodle. I'm sorry for not realizing that you still needed time to mend from those wounds. Yes, they are still very, very much there. And what is also there is the disappointment in myself for not doing anything with Tarzan after I found out what my son did to him. If you're still mending from the wounds, then you know what? Maybe we should change this subject. Sorry if I ever brought it up. No. You brought us down this rabbit's hole, so we might as well keep on going down there. Man, that rabbit is gonna be really uncomfortable. You know what I mean. So due to your first-hand experiences, you for one can fully confirm whether or not Tarzan is indeed a super-duper hero. Well, now that you've brought up these past memories all back to my brain, I do recall now the similarities that Tarzan has to the basic superhero setup. Yes, such is the fact that you have personal ties with Tarzan. Yes, I just brought up a very uncomfortable tragedy in my family. Oh shit, I did it again. Shit, fuck. Moving on from that subject. Moving on. But not only do you have a tragic history with Tarzan, whoops, I brought it up again a third time, but not only that, also you were cahooting with other supervillains of Tarzan. Yes, you were making deals and shit. You were cohorsing with them. That's what a good supervillain does. They strike a common enemy amongst the associates, and that common enemy is the hero. That's what supervillains do all the time. Oh, I get it. So you see me as the superpowered villain who can go toe-to-toe with the hero, in this case Tarzan, while you have the more business-based villain who is all about the money and the management and the political power, not physical power, but political. You have them pulling all the strings. Yes, and that brings us to the other villain, Captain Leon Rom. Wait a minute, that's a real-life person. Well, from the way we've been framing this, they're all real life to us, but I get what you're saying. They're real life in a sense of being actual real life in the viewer's world. In their world, Leon Rom is a real person who actually existed. But guess what? He is much like Hitler. Because you see, with Hitler, he's one of those people who go down in history to practically being an actual real-life supervillain, along with Genghis Khan, Attila the Hun, Napoleon Bonaparte, the Kim Jongs, Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, and Donald Trump, that it's very natural to depict them as supervillains in fiction because they practically already were. So that's also the case with Leon Rom. Yes, and you of all people should know that firsthand since you actually cohorted with them, as I just revealed. Oh, come on now. You know that even though I'm able to live for all this time, that does not mean I actually remember all that. I only remember the real important details, such as my son's death. But when it comes to this little businessman who wears a hat in the jungle, I tend to draw a blank. Speaking of which, that is the quickest way to spot the villain of your movie if they're wearing a hat in the middle of the jungle. Usually that's a dead giveaway. Yes, but I made sure that one of my tribesmen would take away that hat from him, because we knew that was his prized possession. So we took it away from him, and I allowed one of my tribesmen to wear it as a snazzy way to start conversations, and also to get him laid. I'm sure he got a lot of sex with that hat, but I don't think that was his prized possession. No, that necklace was his prized possession. And that's what ties him closer to being a supervillain, is that he has a special weapon that he uses. Well, come on now. All villains of all kinds have special weapons that are really weird and not what you expect to be a weapon. Most of the James Bond villains are like that. Yeah, you might be right on that one, but let's face it, it's very evident that Tarzan has been reworked just a smeety smitey smidge to be more like a superhero because he's going up against a tyrant who's trying to take over a whole land everywhere. He's trying to take over the whole goddamn continent by slave driving them because that's what actually happened in actual history. Yes, Leon Rom was an actual slave driver who actually was merciless. Maybe not to the scale of this movie, but still. But maybe the filmmakers thought that they were making this too much like a superhero film, so they pulled back a bit and instead decided to inject realism into this story. What's not realistic about Tarzan? A bunch of apes raising a little baby boy instead of killing the boy. How about that for starters? I would like to think that what the filmmakers were doing was trying to hit a balance. They didn't just want to put the superhero aspect in there, they also wanted to put realism in there too, by associating this film with real life events, such as the inclusion of Captain Leon Rom as the villain, and also the inclusion of George Washington Williams as the ally of Tarzan. Yes, they wanted to put more aspects in there of superhero stuff, but did it by taking real life elements and making that the superhero stuff. You got your nationwide world dominance plan that's based on an actual plan that actually happened. You got your supervillain that's based on an actual guy who actually existed. And you've got your ally. And it's all tied around real life history. You see what this film is doing? Not only is it trying to be an entertaining piece, but it's also bringing up actual historical issues that happened, important historical issues that actually happened, and bringing it to the young people who probably never even goddamn heard of all this. I mean, I didn't hear about slaving going on in the Congo. I didn't know that once slave abolitionists, is that how you pronounce it? Abolitionists. I didn't know about how there were these slave abolitionists that after the Civil War and after slave was done with, was kaput, they were like, okay, now that we've helped this country with their slave problems, let's go to other countries. Yes, because guess what? Slaving is a whole worldwide thing. We tend to just focus on America's history with slavery. We tend to just focus on that when it comes to slavery. But guess what? There's other countries that fucking deal with that too. So it's good for this movie to show us those other slave tragedies. Although one could argue that a more accurate representation of that history would be better if it was a full-on biopic on those happenings instead of a Tarzan movie. Well, there's probably a lot of people who wouldn't see a film that's just about the Congo slave happenings if it was just that. They probably wouldn't see it, but they would see a Tarzan movie, so you're getting in that crowd. And plus, those Congo historians are probably also gonna watch it too, because Tarzan is a cherished historical literature character. He's not an actual historic figure, at least in the viewer's world, but he is historically significant. So that is a good way of bringing all the young people in. Okay, fine. But just keep in mind that there is a lot of historical inaccuracies, such as the way that Leon Rom died. Not to mention the fact that Leon Rom died way after the death of George Washington Williams, and yet at the end of the movie, George Washington Williams is still alive. Oh, you know if this was a straight up biopic, they would still make huge gaping inaccuracies anyway. That's a common staple in historical films. That's something that they always need to do, is deliberately switch stuff around and tweak some stuff up and tweak some stuff down for the sake of the storytelling craft. And they decided to do that with Leon Rom because it's going along with the two-villain formula with superhero films. That if you're going to have a film with multiple supervillains, one of them has to die while the other gets out scot-free. I see. And I was the one who got out scot-free. Yes, although there's another supervillain who also got out scot-free, but he also got comeuppance as well. This little old bumbling fat guy. He was trying to do some deals with Leon Rom for the sake of blood diamonds. But don't worry, he got caught and shit, and so he's all locked up and fuck. But Leon Rom, on the other hand, he was the sacrificial villain of this story because he was eaten by crocodiles. And don't forget the hat that I gave to that tribesman so that he can get some mad pussy. Or dick. I forget which way he went. However, there's also that tendency for films that have multiple supervillains for one of them to become a good guy all of a sudden. Now, I don't like that tradition. I am against it. I am strongly against that way of thinking. But I can see why some supervillains would do that. I do. I cut Magneto some slack about his reinventing of himself, so I can cut some slack to you too. Well, I didn't really become an ally of Tarzan necessarily. It's just that I decided not to kill him. That doesn't mean I respect him. That just means that I no longer want to kill him. But who knows? Maybe I'll join forces with Tarzan later. Well, that depends on the box office returns. So anyway, so you got your villains, you got your allies, but you also have the backstory. Yes, we're going back to that ludicrous origin with the apes that raised him after his family died in the jungle. Classic superhero origin story. In fact, it's practically like Superman. What with the family that's inevitably going to die, so the kid gets found by this new family that raises it as one of their own, and then this boy who grows up to find out that the reason why he's not like his family is because he's a part of a different race, and he learns to embrace while not forgetting about his past and his bringing ups. Now hold on right now. Don't say that Superman got his origin story from Tarzan. They both probably got their origin stories from Moses. Yeah, you're probably right, Moses. Which is weird that Zack Snyder keeps being like, no, that's not the biblical character that Superman is based on. It's Jesus. It's Jesus. But anyway, I see what you're saying there. And that only proves my point. Because superheroes are all about being derived from older mythological characters from back in the day. A lot of them are. A lot of them aren't. Like, there are still some unique ideas that were never done before, but other of them are homages to earlier work. See, you're only proving my point. Oh, next thing you'll say is that Tarzan has a secret identity, like Clark Kent. He does. And he also has a perplex about it. That's his whole story arc in the film, is that he has a complex regarding the relationship between these two sides of his personality. Yes, that's a common theme with superheroes, is that they treat their superhero persona as a separate entity from their civilian identity. Yes, they're two different personas. They're two different sides of their personalities that are battling each other to see who becomes dominant of their life. With some superheroes, their superhero persona is their defying persona. But with others, it's their civilian persona that is their actual identity. And that is the complication that Tarzan has in this movie. It takes place after he became civilized and went over to Great Britain and became civilized. He no longer wants to be called Tarzan. He wants to be called the name that his father gave him before he went all dead due to a cheetah. Curse you, Chester Cheeto! You evil, 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 evil cat puppet! And that name is John Clayton, and he wants to no longer be called Tarzan, and he even refers to his other persona as a separate entity. Like, no, Tarzan is done. I am John Clayton III. Tarzan is just some asshole in the jungle who was all naked and was a nudist, naked man. Oh, by the way, you are discussing realism with this movie. This movie is probably the most realistic depiction of Tarzan, because Tarzan spent his whole life in the jungle in the nude, just buck-ass naked. He didn't have that loincloth. Yeah, and why would he in a realistic sense? Why would he think to wear a loincloth if he's raised by apes, if he's raised by gorillas? No, they wouldn't give a fuck about that, probably. They would just let him be all naked and shit. Although that made things really awkward when we had to see the ass of a small child, like, oh my god, child nudity laws, oh shit. But anyway, hey now, this makes it more similar to Superman. Just about every time we had a Superman origin story in the movies, we always saw a little boy naked. You don't have to emphasize on that, Papa Midnight, holy fuck. But that loincloth is very important to the whole story arc that Tarzan goes through. Because I believe that this whole film is an origin story, even though they treat it like this is a new story and the origin story already happened. And the reason why I believe that is because the origin story that they show us is very unfinished. It doesn't feel like the whole Tarzan story. It just feels like a little teeny tiny bit of it, because it's just him getting raised by the apes, and he has that horrible tragedy that ties him with you, and then he meets young Jane, young Harley Quinn. I imagine this is probably an ancestor of Harley Quinn. And then that's when he gets all civilized and stuff. And you feel like you're missing a lot. You feel like you're missing... It doesn't feel like a complete backstory, and that's because this whole film is supposed to be the backstory. They're just flashing back to the earlier parts of the backstory. What's going on in the present for this film is the rest of the backstory, where he decides he is no longer going to be Tarzan. He is no longer going to be that uncivilized white ape, as they called him, but they should have called him Naked Hobo of the Jungle instead. There he is! There's the naked dude! He has no shame! But once he gets pulled back into the jungle because of the complications going on with Leon Rom, that is what drives him to go back to being Tarzan. Not before still retaining his previous identity of being John Clayton III. And I believe the whole lack of loincloth is because he was never fully the Tarzan that we're all familiar with until he donned that loincloth at the very end. Because before, he was just some naked guy, just some crazy naked guy who was making horrible decisions, killing people with not realizing that he needs to know more about the situation. Oh god, this is becoming too real with the times. But also, he was not the fully realized Tarzan when he was on the mainland, in Britain, or wherever the hell. Over there, he was trying to no longer be Tarzan. There, he was John Clayton. He was reforming himself. But what he didn't realize is that he shouldn't treat Tarzan and John Clayton as two separate beings. Tarzan being the crazy naked guy, and John Clayton being the reasonable clothed man. Because as you saw in all the trailers, he wore pants. And a lot of people were like, hey, why is he wearing wearing pants when he should be wearing his loincloth? Well, that's because you need those two halves to be put together to make one whole Tarzan. You take the crazy naked man and you combine him with the civilized, rational man who wears pantalones, and you put those together to form Tarzan, a fully realized character who realizes that he should embrace both sides of his history, the jungle part being naked and the civilized part wearing pants, to be fully wild while at the same time not being completely wild and covering up his bits, but not with pants, no, with a loincloth, thus representing the balance between those two sides. He is Tarzan. Are you sure you're not just reading way too much into it? I might be. I might be a little teeny tiny bit, but no, I feel that this is a movie where at first when you watch it, it seems like it's just this generic flick where, oh, there's a damsel in distress and the guy's gonna go through a character arc trying to save the damsel in distress, and the villain who's out for revenge, and the teaming up with allies to get into this big climactic action battle. I mean, that seems like it at first, but there's probably a lot more to it than that was hidden in there just a wee bit. And that's what I discovered looking back on it now. It's just too bad we didn't really get that much enough of the personalities of these characters. Sure, we got a lot of character from Washington Williams, but not really that much from Tarzan. Well, I feel, as I said, a lot of that is the stuff that you pick up on it without having him actually say it. I think it's a matter of showing and not telling. You can cipher his story arc not from what he's saying. And it makes sense that he wouldn't say that much, considering that English is something he picked up on in adulthood and not when he was growing up. So of course he would be stoic and use his sentences at very brief times, not that much. But it also makes sense that he would still be able to make complete sentences and not sound like he's saying broken English, because he's past that point in his life. He discovered English when he was a teenager with Jane. So of course he would be able to say it fluently, although I'm kind of disappointed we didn't hear that classic Tarzan talk, you know, the "me Tarzan, me am Tarzan, you am Jane, you am Washington Williams, slavery am bad, me take bad slave driver man and throw him to crocodiles." Also, wasn't it kind of weird to hear him with a British accent? Yeah, at first I was like, okay, that makes sense that he has a British accent because, you know, he was civilized by British people. But then you hear Jane's voice and it's startlingly American, so you would think, wait a minute, if he learned English from her, wouldn't he have sort of an American accent? I mean, I know he's the parents of British people, but wouldn't he have that American accent? But anyway, maybe he was taught by other people. Maybe that. Maybe he was taught by other people than Jane. And yes, before you get all mad and up in a heap, I know that in the original books, Jane is American. I know that now. But when I was watching the film, I was completely under the impression that that was a change and that she was actually British and not American in the original books. And I think the reason why I always assumed that is because she's British in the Disney movie. She's British in that. So I just assumed that she was British in everything else. It didn't come to my mind like, oh, wait a minute, she's only British in that. She's not British everywhere else. So whoopsie doodle on my part. Sorry that's the version of Tarzan that I'm most familiar with, but let's face it, that's probably how most people are with Tarzan, is that their most familiar version is the Disney one in 1999. Let's face the facts right now. Well, you know, with young people, that's the case, but for me, it will always be George of the Jungle. That's weird that you would choose that one, considering your hundreds and hundreds of years old and were like born before Tarzan was written. But anyway, so that might have been my problem with Jane's voice, is that I just was expecting a British voice and did not hear that, and so it was jarring to me. And even knowing now that it's supposed to be American, it still kind of feels it still kind of sounds jarring in the movie. Actually, it still sounds really jarring that she sounds American in that, because like everyone else is British, and I know Samuel Jackson is American, so that shouldn't be a problem with him. But with her, it just, I don't know why, but it just felt less like the problem was that it sounded too American, and more of the problem that it sounded too modern, like she was a millennial hanging out in this history movie about the 1800s. Like, oh hey guys, I just dropped from my time machine, LOL, hashtag time travel WTF, hashtag Tarzan, hashtag OMG, hashtag smiley face, hashtag poop emoji. Yes, so there is still a lot of problems to have with this movie. Yeah, that was probably just a few. That was probably just one of them. But still, what redeems the seemingly predictable story arc is that it's more interesting to look at back on afterwards. And we're still not done just yet with talking about this movie. There is still one last thing to talk about. You mean his child that was born? Because apparently being in Africa helps make his sperm fertile. Well, we're not completely sure if it was his sperm's fault for the last attempt for a baby, because I think they mentioned that they lost a baby, so that's really sad and depressing. But anyway, no, I see what you're saying with that child, because at the end of the movie, they're able to have a child, and of course, if you're familiar with the books, you'd know that that child is actually a significant character in the Tarzan lore. Now, with me, on the other hand, I didn't know that. I thought that was just something the movie decided to do, but then I researched and I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is actually a character. They could make this movie now. They could actually do what they did with the Independence Day with this, and, like, if it takes a long while to make this movie, maybe they could take a long-ass while, and then have it be long enough where that kid is a full-grown adult, and then do stories with it. Or have this be a franchise and build up to that adulthood. I mean, this movie apparently exceeded expectations by not being a flop. But anyway, the baby is not the subject that I was trying to get to as the last point of this movie. No! The last point of the movie I was going to get to was the fact that we still need to discuss the classic tragedy of the hero's past that ties him in with the supervillain. Now, I know a lot of people like to argue that they prefer their villains to not be tied with the hero and just be an asshole who just wants to fight the villain. And yeah, that's fun sometimes, and you do see that, and I like that. You know, that's how I'm tied with a lot of my enemies, is I'm like, hey, you assholes, let's fucking fight! But let's keep in mind is that we had that here with Lian Rum. He was the supervillain that was just pitted with Tarzan. They didn't need a tragic tie-in. Although he got a little rapey with Harley Quinn's ancestors, so I'm not sure if that was necessary. But that means you can have the tragic backstory with the other villain, you. Yes. Because I found out that the reason why Tarzan slayed my son in cold blood was because my son killed a gorilla. Not just any gorilla, but the gorilla that raised him. His mama gorilla. The gorilla that sang a Phil Collins song to him when he was a baby. Wrong, Tarzan. Had I known that before I declared my revenge, yeah, I still would have been pissed at him as all hell, but I would have forgave him, and that's what I did. I forgave him. I did not become his ally, because I wasn't completely forgiving him. Because let's face it, I just have a lot of emotions going on right now about the revelation regarding a tragic death in my family. So I had to sit on it. I had to take a break. But that's okay, because the tribesman who I gave the hat to, he was present for that event, the climactic battle where Tarzan decided to reenact the Mufasa death scene of the Lion King, with the wildebeests doing the running of the bulls routine at the village. Yes, and that's what ties it all together, is the classic idea of the yin and yang between hero and their arch nemesis. One does a bad thing to the other because of a bad thing that was happened to them, but then they realize that they should stop doing the bad thing to the other side, because that will only cause a back and forth to continue. Like, what if Tarzan died? Then Jane would have exacted revenge, or George Washington Williams would have exacted revenge on you. And what if you died? Then that means the man with the hat who got laid for his hat would have had to avenge you. And it would have been back and forth and back and forth. It needed to be cut. The chain needed to be stopped. And it was. Yes. And now I have dealt with my past, and I have remembered what helped me get over the traumatic event. Thank you, Gravitalk. Thank you for helping me embrace my past, the way that Tarzan embraced his. But it doesn't matter now, because he's been dead for centuries, along with Jane and George Washington Williams and everybody except for me. And Vandal Savage. Wait, what? Hey, you think you were the only DC villain who has the power of immortality to be in that movie? Guess what? Vandal Savage was also in the movie. Oh, that's right. He played a henchman of Lian Rom. Yes, and he cleverly faked his death so that he can go on doing his other ways of taking over the world. By the way, apparently he has still not been able to do that even right now. Well, I think in this timeline he is currently ashes. Oh yeah, that's right. Man, that timeline is screwy. But anyway, alright. But yes, thank you for allowing me to dig into your history and discover some exciting things. Because guess what? This is an event in history that actually a lot of my associates have ties with. Not just you and Vandal Savage, but also the Octopus, or as he likes to call himself, Mr. Glass currently, and Bludnovsky. They both have ancestors who had very much all to do with this event. And apparently it just so happens that their ancestors are also real-life historical figures. Yes, I never knew that about Bludnovsky. I didn't know his ancestor was a slave owner. Holy fuck, maybe he should stay away from the family tree websites. Maybe he should stay away from those. But yeah, I probably should tell Mr. Glass about his, since his was like a civil rights activist, so he would be probably excited about that. But the problem with that, of course, is I can't tell them at the moment, because they've been abducted, and I still can't find them. Yes, and this is why I am here. The real reason I am here. To help you find them by uncovering more information. But before we do that, Papa Midnight, we need to fully end this the right way, and that is by rating the movie. Now, Papa Midnight, tell me, which experience is more ideal to you? Watching this movie, or getting choked by a necklace and then having to deal with a bunch of hippos inside of a cage trying to reenact Shark Week when in fact you're reenacting Hippo Week? Oh, hippos! I'd say this movie was better experience. Not just for shining some light on my dark past, but also because it fulfills its purpose of being a big action film, a popcorn flick. Yes, and while it can be that at times, there are a few points where it's a little bit slow and whatnot, but I believe that those are the points where you really gotta get that juicy stuff that you can look back on later. And so for that, I do also prefer this movie over having to deal with hippopotami. Hungry, hungry hippos! Okay, good. Now that we've got that out of the way, we can finally get to business. I know someone who can spread some more light on this mystery regarding the apocalypse so that we can stop it. And who exactly is that? Well, you're not going to like who it is. Try me. The person who can help us is the one who's going to administer it. Wait, what? Yes, my associate who could help us is a demon. A demon who has been given the task of starting Armageddon. Oh my God! Yes, this could be very, very dangerous. But considering the other things you've made me do with my voodoo powers, you've had a lot of experience with doing dangerously stupid things, so this might just work. Yes, and not only that, but also this demon is the perfect guest for me to discuss next week's movie with. Yes, because next week we are dealing with a particular group who know all too well about dealing with supernatural beings that try to end the world. It's too perfect! Oh, God, I forgot. The juggling. Yep, I'm a juggler, and this has been the show. I'll see you next week. So how long does it take to summon this demon? I believe it takes about a week. Oh, really? So it turns out my reasoning actually is useful for you. You can take a week to summon the demon while I get ready for the video. See? Isn't this actually perfect? Isn't it actually helpful to do these two different things at the same time? Yes, but I'm not admitting it.